Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name's Stuart Lynch. Today we're diving into one of the most visually striking elements of any SwiftUI app, and that's images. We'll explore what you need to know about displaying images in SwiftUI, from loading them right from your assets folder or your apps bundle, all the way to fetching them from a remote URL. So whether you're a seasoned developer looking for a refresher, or you're just getting started with SwiftUI, this tutorial will show you how to handle images efficiently and give them the professional polish every app needs. So grab your Xcode, get comfortable, and let's jump right in. I love getting your feedback, so tap the thumbs up button if you enjoyed this video and leave a comment below. Make sure you subscribe to the video and ring that bell to get notifications of new videos. And if you want to support my work, you can buy me a coffee. There is a starter project for this video, and you can download it from the link in the description. There are two different branches in this repository, and the one that you want is the starter branch. It contains the completed starter app that we'll be using. The completed branch is there as well, and that's containing the completed source code for the video. So make sure you download the zip file for the starter branch so that you can work along with me. Now, as this video is all about images, I thought that I'd provide some images that you can use so that when you follow along with me, you can see the same things that I do. In the starter branch that you have downloaded, you'll find a folder called Tutorial Images. So feel free to drag this out onto your desktop so that you will have easy access to those images. Not all of these images are going to go in the Assets folder, so don't drag them in right now. We'll take them one at a time, so keep this folder handy. One thing to note is that all of those images were taken by me, so there are no copyright issues here. The starter project is just a tab view with 5 different tabs to cover the 5 different topics that we're going to go through. I've structured it so that if you complete the source code, you'll have a nice reference that you can go back to in the future. The first type of image view that I want to talk about is one that is created from assets that you may upload to your assets folder. So the first image I want to add to my assets folder is the one called Lahaina, and it's a JPEG image. And JPEG images are suitable for high-quality photos without transparency. They offer smaller file sizes with lossy compression. I'll talk about other image types as I upload them for the following sections. So open the Assets folder and just drag that image to that folder. And it automatically places it in the 1x slot, and Xcode will try to scale up from there for 2x and 3x. But since this is a high-resolution photo taken with a modern iPhone camera, it likely matches or exceeds the quality needed for 3x devices, so just drag it over into that place there. So now we can return to our first Image Assets View tab. I'm going to replace the text view with a VStack. And inside there, I'll create an image view, and because we uploaded the image to the Assets folder, you'll find that now in Xcode, your image's assets have static properties created representing that image. And notice that I can access simply by typing .lahaina. But you'll also notice that Xcode has replaced the capital L with a lowercase l. When an image is added, it consumes as much space as it can get and tries to render it full size in the given space. Well, we can change that by specifying that we want the image to be resizable. And as soon as I do that, it adheres to these safe areas, but still consumes all of the other space. Also, the proportions are all off. So we have two choices. So first, let's tell it to scale to fill. In this case, the proportions are good, but we're only seeing a portion of the image, and it's centered. The other option is scaled to fit. And in this case, we get the entire image scaled to fit within the horizontal and vertical space given to it. So it reaches its width first, so the height is scaled accordingly. Now, there are two other ways in which we might see an image asset being presented. The first is to use the actual name as a string, in which case it has to be typed exactly the same as the image that we uploaded. So in this case, capital L, Lahaina. And because it is that large image, we need to resize it and scale to fit. Well, image assets are actually UI images. So we can also create an instance for the image view using a UI image label and then accessing the UI image named for our asset name. Now, unfortunately, this is an optional UI image because it may not exist. So we'll need to force unwrap it if we're sure that it does exist. And let's apply the same two modifiers here so that we get three representations of the same image. So if the UI image doesn't exist, let me just change one of the letters here, we'll see that our preview crashes. So force unwrapping is likely not the best thing to do here. However, that's not the case for the string of our SwiftUI image initializer. Now, if you're constantly applying the same modifiers to a set of images, you might want to create an extension on image. Then within the extension, you can create a function that I'll call resized that's going to return some view. But because this is an image extension, self will be an image, so we can simply apply those same two modifiers to self. And then we can go back into our body and replace those two modifiers in the views with a single one, now resized. Well, now I can play around with my modifiers and see how it affects all three in the view. So first, instead of scale to fit, let's say scale to fill. Now we're extending beyond the safe area. Well, I have a couple of choices here. I can change the V-stack into a scroll view. And now you see that we have access to all three images, scale to fill, and we get a scrollable view to see all of the images. Now, if you're not concerned with the entire image, but you want to extend to the full width of the view, but not scroll, let me revert to a V-stack. Then we can apply a frame and specify a height of light 200. And you can see the top two images are 200, but the lower one is not. And that's because scale to fill is still trying to take up as much space as is possible. So what you need to do is to apply a clipped modifier as well. And now you get the image clipped to fill a frame with a height of 200, but no restrictions on the width. So you'll get the full width of the image, but still only 200 pixels of the image in the center. If you were to change the frame height to width, you'll see the difference. I prefer the height restriction on this one. It's not always the case that images are stored in the Assets folder of your app. We can also store images in the bundle, which basically means anywhere within the navigation hierarchy, or in the Documents folder or some other folder accessible within your app, like the Application Support directory. Or we can fetch images from some external source. So let's take a look at all three. First, the bundle. So let's replace this text view with a scroll view. And then in case we only have a single image, I don't want the user to be distracted with the scroll, we can apply a scroll bounce behavior and specify based on size. Next, I'm going to create within the scroll view a V-stack for our three images. As I said, we can store images in the bundle, and this means either uploading or dragging an image either directly within our project navigator or create a folder to store the image. Well, I already have a folder called Bundle Images folder here, so let me just copy one of the images to that folder. And this time I'm going to choose the siwash.png image. Well, to fetch and display that image, it doesn't really matter that I have placed it in a folder. The bundle is flat, so we can check to see if that image is located in the main bundle using an if-let URL is equal to the bundle.main.url for the resource, and for that we need to specify exactly the name. So I'm going to use siwash.png. And since I'm including the extension with the name, I'll use an empty string for the extension. And then still within the conditional, we can check to see if we can get data by trying to extract the data from the contents of that URL. And then still within that conditional if we have that data, we can try and create a UI image using the UI image initializer from that data. Well, if this is successful, then we can create an image using our UI image initializer for that image. And then we can make it resizable and scaled to fit. And then if the image doesn't exist, we can present a content unavailable view with a string and a system image. Well, sometimes we store images in the app's file system, and most common we place those in the application's documents directory, like when we select a photo from the photo album and want to save it in our app or take a picture with a camera. And we can find the location of the documents directory by creating an onAppear block. And then within the onAppear block, we can print the url.documentsdirectory.path and specifying the percent encoding is false. Now this will give us a different location depending on whether we're on the phone, the simulator, or the preview. Well, if we reveal the console and the previews console, we can see that location printed there. So I can select this, and let me just move this up so that you can see what I'm doing. I can right-click on the selected text and then choose Services, Open, and then run that, and it'll reveal that directory. So I'm going to drag that Inukshuk PNG into that folder. Returning to our view now, I can create a file URL variable by using that url.documents directory and appending the path component, which will be the name of that image. And I don't need the UT type. Now that I have that file URL, I can use an if clause to use the file manager's static default instance to check to see if the file exists at that file URL's path. And if that's the case, still within the if clause, I can see if I can create an image using the UI image initializer, but this time by accessing the contents of file at that file URL path. If that's the case, then we can create another image using that UI image and apply our modifiers. Looking good. Let's also add an else clause in case that file doesn't exist or I made some typo. The third case is if we get an image from an external URL. And if that's the case and it exists, it may take a while to download. So we can use an AsyncImage for the URL to fetch the image. So we form the URL by creating a URL from a string representing the location or that URL. And I have a link in the description of this video to an image that I have on my GitHub repository in a Pages account. So I'm just going to paste it here. And if we use an if-let in the case that it does not exist. If it does exist, we can use an AsyncImage initializer where we can pass that URL in to get the content and then provide a placeholder image while it's downloading. Well, the URL is our URL that will give us the image that is in fact now a SwiftUI image view, so we can use it directly in our view. And then for the placeholder, we can provide a progress view. Let's also apply those two modifiers. And once again, in case I had a typo or something, let's provide an else clause here as well. On the next page, we're going to explore more ways to present our views. So for example, I'm going to be using 2 pictures of my dog Rupert. So I want to drag these into the assets folder of your project and make them 3x because they're high quality images. So back in the view, replace the text view with a VStack. And then inside the VStack, create an image using the Rupert asset. Make it resizable and scale to fit. And then let's apply a clip shape. And you can choose from any one of those static properties. So for example, circle. Below that, then, let's create a second image of Rupert that's resizable and scaled to fit, so same image. This time I won't use a static clip shape. I'm going to create a clip shape from a rounded rectangle with a corner radius of 20. So you can get pretty creative here with your clip shapes. But one other thing that you can do is you can apply a mask. So I'm going to create a third image of Rupert. And this time I want to mask that image with another view. And this view can be pretty much anything, but I'm going to mask it with another image. But for this image, I'm going to use a system image using an SF symbol of Apple logo. I've purposely not included creating image views with SF symbols in this video, as that's a full topic on its own. I do cover that pretty thoroughly though in this video, so I'll leave a link in the description. Well, this is a small image, but we can make it resizable and scale to fit. Now, the way that Rupert is being masked by this view is not great. So I'm going to use the second Rupert 2 instead. That's better. And I can apply a frame here to increase the height to, say, 300. Moving on now, let's explore template images. And for the template images page, I'm going to use my 2 grape images. So drag those images into the assets folder, and you'll notice that they are different. There's no 1x, 2x, or 3x version, and that's because both of these are PDFs. And like SVGs, they're vector images, and they can scale automatically. Now, they're slightly different images that you'll see in a second. Both have a transparent background like you have with PNG images, though. So let me go back to the view now. So let's start by replacing the text view with a VStack as usual, and we'll create our images inside there. And create an image using first grape image and make it resizable and scale to fit. Now, the way that this is displayed is the original rendering mode of our image, which is full color. But we can also specify that the rendering mode is something different, which is template. By doing this, it turns all pixels in the image black. And this is what a mask would look like if we use this image as our mask. I don't want that though. Let me remove it. And let me create a second version, but this time using grapes 2. It's a slightly different image in that instead of using solid colors for the grapes, I've used different opacities to get a similar effect. And I use Sketch for this, but you could use Figma or some other graphics program. Now, let me apply the template rendering mode here. This time we see a difference in the way that it's displayed. They aren't solid blacks. There are varying degrees of opacities that show through. Now, If I want this image to always be rendered into template mode, I can comment this out, and I'll return to my asset catalog. And if I reveal the inspector for the image, I can change the render here to be template image. And if I return to the view, I can see now that's reverted to that rendered way. Well, so what, you say? Well, let me show you how this could actually be quite effective. Let me use this same image as a label for a button. And you can see that the default blue tint is applied to the template image. Well, that doesn't look very good, but we can apply our own tint to the button, like this. How about a purple tint? That's still not very good. But I could mix it with black at 40%. Now it looks pretty good. But what if I wanted to change this to green grapes? So I can change from purple to green. Template images are really good if you have your own custom images and you want to have different color themes. For this final tab, we're going to explore some image effect modifiers that you can play around with. So I'm going to use the same image. We'll add that in a minute. But first, let's replace the text view with a scroll view. And inside there, I'll place a V-stack. And then again, for the scroll view, I'm going to make the scroll bounce behavior based on size. And then all images are going to have the same modifiers. So once again, I'm going to create an extension on image. And then I'm going to create a function called normal that will return some view. And then the image is self. And to that, I can apply a resizable and scale to fit modifier. So now let's add the image that I'm going to use. And for this one, I'm going to use a photo of Kelowna, the city where we used to have a home here in British Columbia. And I'll drag it into the 3x position. Now in the V-stack, I'm going to create an image using that asset. And I'll apply the normal modifier. And you can see that even though this is in a scroll view, there's no scrolling because its size doesn't warrant it. So now I can explore different special effects. I'll leave the first one here for reference, but each time I use the same image with normal applied to it. So in the first one I want to take a look at is blur. So you can pass in a blur value as a CG float. And the larger the radius, the blurrier the image gets. The next example, we can apply a brightness value. And this is a double value between -1 and 1. So first, on the positive side, a value of 1 would be so bright that the image would be white. So if we choose somewhere between 0 and 1, like 0.2, you see that the image gets brighter. So similarly then, on the negative side, -1 would turn the image black. But somewhere in between 0 and -1, it'll darken the image to your liking. Well, there's also a saturation modifier that accepts a double value. And a value of 1 is normal. The higher value you enter, the more saturated the colors get. So play around with this a little while to see what you get. You can get some striking effects. Well, you can also turn a color image into an image with no colors by applying a grayscale. So a grayscale of 1 removes all colors, so now it looks like a black and white photo. But you can increase or decrease that value to get some really interesting effects. Another thing that you can do is to use a color multiply modifier. And this will basically apply a color bias to an image. So for example, a red bias by adding the color red. Or perhaps a green bias. Well, you don't have to limit yourself to only one modifier. You can have them compounded and have multiple effects on each image. So for example, let me first apply a saturation of 2.0 and then a color multiply to have a bias towards red. And finally, let's take a look at blend mode. And for this, I'm going to create a Z stack where the Kelowna image is the first item in the Z stack. And then I can place a red color view over top. And this completely obliterates the image. But I can apply a blend mode for that red color. And then choose, for example, the screen case. And then you can see the color view blends in with the image. Another blend mode to try is the soft light blend mode. And as you'll see, this gives a really nice soft blend of the red and the image. So I really encourage you to play around with the different modifiers to see what you can come up with. There's a lot built into SwiftUI, and the possibilities with image use is really quite endless. So I hope you've learned something new in this video that you can use in your own projects going forward. If you found this tutorial helpful, please give it a thumbs up and leave me a comment. You can subscribe to my channel to get notifications of new videos. And remember that you can also download my YouTube channel listing app for free and quick access to all of my 350 plus YouTube videos. A link's in the description. And also remember, I have a full SwiftUI course available on my Teachable site where you learn how to build a fun multi-targeted app.